Hayley Nebauer is a costume designer known for Doctor Who, The Musketeers, The Capture, and her new project is the Hulu series Black Cake. Hayley, this show tells a massive story spanning countries and decades and class structures and characters. I guess as a costume designer, like, where did you start in terms of wanting to tell the story?
You're right. It was a really exciting project when it came up. The earliest part of the story spans from 1940 in Jamaica, and it goes right through to present day, hitting every decade in between. So I guess where I started when I first read the scripts was you kind of want to start with the parts you're most excited about, which for me was the 60s in Jamaica, because I didn't know a lot about it. And so I had to really get into the heavy research and find out not what I already knew about the 60s generally for fashion from other countries, but what was happening in Jamaica at the time, what were the little truths and the things that, the nuances that helped tell the story and get the feeling right for who those people were and what they wore, how they expressed themselves in that specific place and time. So it really started there. And there were some online archives and libraries and things we could go to. But in the end, the place where I got a lot of the really authentic material from were people's family photo albums in Jamaica. Which was brilliant. You could see the homemade swimsuits that people had, photographs from people's weddings, kids walking to school, all the different levels of the story that we go across and what those people were wearing. It was great.
And then do you start then, are you building the costumes? Are you finding like original like pieces? Like how did you kind of like go from there?
It was a bit of everything, really. We went to all the costume houses and tried to do a bit of a recce to see what they had that was appropriate for the period. But there were lots of interesting little, I don't know, incongruous things about some of the pieces that were really popular in Jamaica at the time, like Clark's footwear. They loved Clark's British shoes. The suede desert boots and things were kind of the coolest shoes in Jamaica at the time. And all of those generally have sort of long since perished, but we did actually manage to find one vintage wholesaler who had boxes of them in a warehouse, and they were all the authentic ones from the 60s that we could use. So we got all of those here in the UK. We did get pieces from hire houses, but we also had to make a huge quantity of pieces. All the swimwear was generally custom made using vintage references. We had fabrics printed up with the vintage prints to match, choosing all the colors. So we had some nice harmonious contrasts between the pairs of characters when they're in the water and at the beach. It was really quite a lot of fun, the scope of materials we tried to reproduce to capture the essence of what people wore in Jamaica at the time, and also transferring that to other areas of the show. The main different, I guess, aesthetics or color palettes we had across the show. In Jamaica, it was all these sort of sun-bleached tropical colors and sorbets and optimistic and refreshing and light. But then when the story moves to London, it's not a place of hope. It's not swinging London in the 60s. It's very bleak and it's desaturated, and there's lots of beiges and greys until you get to the boarding house in South London, where we've got this vibrant Caribbean community wearing all these interesting knit pieces that were very specific to their subculture at the time. So trying to make sure that we built up what was authentic to the characters in the story, but also differentiating the color palettes from one place to another. We also had another color palette for Edinburgh, and we had some for Italy, and then also some for contemporary LA. So as the episodes and the stories jump back and forth from one place to another, we're instantly planted in that part of the narrative so the audience knows where they are, and it sets the tone for where the story is going next.
Yeah, it's really incredible work. One of the things I love about the show too is that you have obviously like all the all of the characters honestly are either have, we don't need to spoil it, but they have like different secrets and different things they have not told other people. And I was wondering, especially with like Covey, like how did you think about the characters and like how that would impact how they dress, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like the idea that they've got things they're hiding, or I don't know, did you think about that? And like kind of maybe with Covey specifically, and as she evolves into like, we meet her later as Eleanor, like as an adult, this is all in the first episode, but like how did you think about that? And like kind of how her history would impact her wardrobe and stuff as she got to be an adult?
Sure. Generally speaking, throughout the show, a lot of the mid-century characters, we were playing to the idea that people, as they did, usually dressed more for the class and the times, and how they would be perceived as being respectable by others around them. But when we got to the young characters, we had to have some fun with it, because they had that sense of excitement and optimism, and got a sense of color into it as well. Cobbie's color is yellow. We always see her in sunshine yellow in Jamaica. And whenever we have moments where she's experiencing happiness again, that sunshine yellow comes out in unexpected ways. Sometimes it's gifted to her by surprise or by luck from someone. Sometimes it's in a flashback memory when she's thinking about better times. We also had a little bit of androgyny mixed into the wardrobe with the styling for Bunny when we're in Jamaica. So she's got denim, and she's a little bit of a tomboy, and we have certain things we're hinting at about her story, but never being very overt, never giving it away, showing that she was a very athletic, very sporting young woman, and to show that she was quite pragmatic in her mindset. And we had that reflecting in her having a slightly more androgynous feel within what was realistic for the time in her style. Other things in terms of secrets, there's one color that we tried to do a total color avoidance on throughout the series, and that was lilac, which if you read the book of Black Cake, all 3 generations of women in the family, they just absolutely abhor that color. It's an instinctive thing. And for us in Black Cake, that color only comes up in very few selected occasions when there's a real feeling of disgust about what's happened or what's about to happen next. And it's a very subtle little visual cue, but that's something that's sort of planted like an Easter egg throughout. The other little thing that we hid sort of as a personal expression was that Cobbie really loved daisies, and we have that as a little reoccurring motif. It's on her wedding dress. It pops up at other places along the way. When she sometimes sees some characters or things that she connects with, we might have little daisies in there as well. But as her story progresses, she, without giving too much away about the story, she loses her own wardrobe. Who Cobbie is in Jamaica, by the time she becomes Coventina in London, her identity and her wardrobe changes with that. What she has access to, each time her identity changes, everything that she had before goes away, and she doesn't have access to it anymore. And her whole wardrobe is then based on the character, the persona, the identity she's adopting from that point forwards. And it's not always within her control. Most of the time, it's generally not. So by the time she becomes a mature character and is living in California, we see that she's very much someone who wants to be respected and fit in, and wants to be noticed as being acceptable, but doesn't want to stick her head too far above the parapet, really. She's not trying to be a fashionista and draw attention. She's trying to show you what she is, that she is very, she's affluent and she's aspirational, but she's also quite modest in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And so she tracks this arc, showing that she's always trying to get to the next sort of chapter in life and get through it calmly, because there's so many things around her she can't control. She's trying to find the joy, and with what she has, she does that quite well, I think. But it's not always within her control.
Right. You mentioned there her wedding dress too. Obviously, that's like a key component in the story, and like that you come back to the wedding night a lot. I guess like you mentioned like kind of the flourishes and stuff, but were there a lot of options for that, how that would look, and like how'd you kind of like, land on the eventual wedding dress?
I looked at a lot of different real 1960s wedding dresses in person, and some images from the time, people's wedding albums from Jamaica. In the end, what we settled on was a mixture of these references together, something that we felt was a choice that her husband-to-be, Little Man, would approve of. He was the one who's taken her to the most expensive wedding shop in Kingston in Jamaica. He's the one who's choosing the most ostentatious dress he can for her, fitting with the styles of the time. So none of that is of Cobbie's choosing, but the little daisies she has along it, those are hers, and there's something of hers in it. But it's very much the whole choice of what that wedding dress is not really hers. So we tried to go with something that would be wearing your wealth and showing your power, which is what her husband, Little Man, was doing and was also putting onto her. But we also wanted it to be beautiful and striking, and I mean, anything would look great on Mia. She can wear clothes brilliantly. But that one felt like it was an elegant simplicity to it that didn't distract from the story with too much fuss. And it was also quite physically convenient for the story, because what happens after the wedding It was a 1960s style little shift dress that then had a huge overskirt over the top that could be clipped off and removed. And so as the wedding dress all came away, it came away in pieces and layers until, she was the bride stripped bare on the beach, completely vulnerable. So it was a dress design that in the end gave us those layers and that opportunity to lose them.
Yeah, it's incredible work, and the show is great. Hayley Nebauer, we're talking about Black Cake, the Hulu series coming soon. Thank you so much, Hayley, for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.